What? Don't you fucking judge me. You knew exactly what this was. What's going on with you guys? TheCaliEffect, king of games here. And today, we solved our 800 count problem by buying all of the 800 counts I could find. If I'm gonna be so 100 with you guys, I really don't want to talk about it. It was a hands down, a 100% oh no, what are you doing, baby category. Walked in, saw the 800 counts, and said I never want to eat them again. But ironically, that's exactly what you do with staples. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys the staples tier list for the September 2020 format. That's right, guys, we've officially hit the best month in the year. It's September, boys! All my September babies, post down below in the comment section, when is your birthday? Also, be sure to say what is a great thing that happened to you in September if you don't have a birthday in September, because we already know. I mean, seriously, September is just the best month of the year. I mean, like, come on now, it's just amazing. But without further ado, let's jump on into this Yu-Gi-Oh! Staples tier list. And at least I got a lot of boxes to fold to put my staple cards in. Alright guys, and here we are onto the tier list. There's actually something I want you guys to do me a favor for, and no, it's not destroy that subscribe button, though you are welcome to. I want you to actually ignore the background. I'm currently going through some construction of my office. It's gonna be too strong, but as normal, we're gonna have 5 different categories. Better be caught with it, sauce, really good, situational, and then of course everybody's favorite, oh no, what are you doing, baby? You know, the category where if you're playing this, you're not doing too well. I also want to take the time out to define a staple Yu-Gi-Oh card inside of this, you know, card game. A staple Yu-Gi-Oh card is a card that can be played in a ton of decks, is fairly generic, and typically is played inside of the main board as opposed to the side deck. Now, of course, in this video, we are not going to include hand traps because we already have an entire tier list dedicated for that. If you guys want to see it, well, that click can be done and it'll take you right there. We're also going to exclude cards that are prominently played inside of the sideboard and cards that aren't played in a large amount unless I see it as a secret tech that could pop up inside of this meta. With all that out of the way, the first card I want to bring to you guys' attention is Book of Lunar Eclipse. Now, this card was in our South category for our staples tier list last time. I'm actually going to bump it down to situational. Book of Lunar Eclipse is probably the best -2 in the Yu-Gi-Oh card game. You can discard 1 card from your hand to flip 2 of your opponent's cards face down. Now, that sounds terrible, mainly because Book of Lunar Eclipse forces you to flip 2 face down cards, and secondly, because it requires you to discard a card. But there's actually really good moments where Book of Lunar Eclipse can shine. Take, for example, if you're going second and your opponent has 2 menacing monsters, like, I don't know, the Virtual World matchup likes to set up with Crystal Wing and Shin all the time. You can literally Book of Lunar Eclipse both of those monsters face down and continue on your merry way. Book of Lunar Eclipse can also address when your opponent is trying to make a board. But the problem with this is that not only are Link monsters really prevalent inside of this format, Book of Lunar Eclipse has no applications against certain situations with like negations on the field, and it requires you to discard a card from your hand. So I'm gonna have to put it in fairly situational, as sometimes it can really shine, and then other times it's probably the worst card you ever thought of. It's still a card that I actually want to pick up 3 copies of Starlights. On a contrast, Book of Eclipse. Book of Moon is a really good Yu-Gi-Oh card, and speaking of such, Book of Eclipse is pretty good as well. But mainly because this card doesn't require you to discard a card, and Book of Moon can be used proactively and defensively just like Lunar Eclipse. Flipping that monster face down before your opponent can link off with it, or flipping that problematic card face down so your opponent can't use its effects. Book of Moon will probably always be a very good card, probably the best -1 inside of the card game. Called by the Grave is a card that you better be caught with it, guys. I mean, come on, boys. Would you rather be caught with it, or would you rather be caught without it? Like my boys used to say, I'd rather be judged by 12 than to be carried by 6. And this card just might decide the game. Imagine in a critical situation, your opponent wants to ghost spell your monster or card that you want from your graveyard to your side of the field. Well, here comes that Call by the Grave. Your opponent wants to Ash Blossom your Shut Off Fusion? Call by the Grave that hoe. This card is actually really good, not only to be able to stop hand traps, but in a lot of matchups, being able to banish cards like Tri-Brigade,
Nerval to prevent them from searching, also banishing a Lulu in graveyard while they're activating Lulu's effect. Call by the Grave is just, it's amazing right now. Compulsory evacuation device. I don't think that compulsory is bad. I think that it's fairly situational. Look, bouncing a card on the field into the extra deck or the hand could be really good. The only problem with compulsory is that it doesn't necessarily solve the situation, especially in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometimes being able to bounce the Shin to your opponent's deck is amazing. Bouncing the Crystal Wing, really good thing to do. And because there's a lot less Omni negates, basically meaning a monster that can negate monster spells and traps in this particular card game, this card actually can shine. Getting rid of the card only for it to come back. Also, Compulse is best when it can be used proactively and defensively, bouncing your cards to be able to gain certain effects as well as disrupting your opponent. And currently, I think only Altergeist would be a deck that could take advantage of it, and so far, none of them are playing it. Cosmic Cyclone is going to sit in the really good category. It is selective removal at the cost of 1,000 life points, can banish, and of course, Artifact Lancia isn't as prominent as it was in the format. Dargo is actually sauce, guys. I didn't think that I would be Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2021 and be like, bro, that card that came out in LOB, yeah, that's the sauce, boy. Darko is incredibly powerful because, again, there aren't a lot of Omni negates inside of this Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta. You can legitimately catch your opponent slipping with a well-timed Dark Hole and wipe their board. It's kind of crazy. I struggle with putting Dark Ruler No More inside of this category, but I've seen a lot of players mainboard it. I'm gonna have to put Dark Ruler No More inside of the, oh man, it feels like better be caught with it. If you are playing the appropriate deck that does struggle breaking those boards, Dark Ruler No More can be pivotal. It can be instrumental. It's actually one of the cheapest outs to Red Eye's Dark Dragoon if it's prevalent inside of your meta. Or if you see a lot of Drytron players inside of your meta, well, I mean, good luck heralding a Dark Ruler No More. That really doesn't happen. Dark Ruler No More does have its drawbacks. She can't OTK your opponent that turn, but at the same time, maybe OTKing is a little overrated, especially when you can actually build the board without your opponent being able to disrupt you with on-field effects. Forbidden Chalice is probably the sauciest card in Yu-Gi-Oh, bro. Forbidden Chalice is literally the opposite of all of the other Forbidden cards, not Forbidden Droplet. It's not Sakura, it's closer to Tamari. She's like the best win user as long as Naruto's not there. I mean, seriously, this card can be activated in the damage step. It gives a 400 attack boost, which could come up if you're trying to get over a certain monster. It can negate monster effects, which we already know how powerful that is in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Chalice actually has it all going for it, as this card can be as cheap as 20 cents and as expensive as $150 or however much the ultimate rare copies are. I love Forbidden Chalice in any format that supports this card. Moving forward would definitely be Naruto because this card is drip. I actually feel that there's a little bit of discrepancy between these two because Forbidden Drip, kind of like Book of Lunar Eclipse, that's cool that we have both of our retrains that could be played inside of this format. This requires you to get rid of cards from your hand or field, and sometimes you're not so comfortable with getting rid of those cards. Where this card genuinely shines is in a format where players summon their entire board and just like, you can't break it. But nowadays, we have to deal with multiple singular disruptions, which makes Forbidden Chalice, in my opinion, just a little bit better. Regardless, Forbidden Droplet does exactly what Forbidden Chalice does, but on a large scale, similar to how Book of Moon does to Book of Lunar Eclipse? Book of Lunar Eclipse, I think I said it right. You send cards from your hand or field to the graveyard, your opponent can't respond with those cards, half all of the monsters that you select attack, and of course, proceed to bash their face in. It can be activated in the damage step, it can be activated on your opponent's turn, just like any other good spell card, right? I feel that Harpy's Feather Duster is slightly worse than Cosmic Cyclone, and here's why. Backrow is prevalent inside of this meta, but there aren't too many top meta decks that set for Backrow where Harpy's Feather Duster can take advantage of. You also have to keep in mind that Harpy's Feather Duster is a slow Yu-Gi-Oh card. It can't be activated during either player's turn. I feel that Harpy's Feather Duster is going to find itself against a lot of chainables, which isn't necessarily good. But of course, this card still has its places to shine, which is why it's regulated to the sideboard more often than not. Ice Dragon's Prison is our very first, oh no, what are you doing, baby? Seriously, in a format where Gozen Match and Rivalry of the Warlords are arguably some of the most underrated best cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm going to keep saying that until it gets through your thick skull, this card would obviously struggle. What are you gonna do? You're gonna wait till your opponent has 2 BBWs of the same type, Tri-Brigade monsters, and banish them? They're gonna laugh at you. Just stop. You're gonna banish those 2 GG from my graveyard? 2 Lulu? 2 Nanyan? What are you doing here? Why are you playing this card right now? Ice Dragon's Prison seriously is an oh no, what are you doing baby card right now. Unless you're playing like Zombie World or a way to make every monster on the field in the graveyard a same type. This is a card you should seriously consider not playing inside of your main board. Imperial Order is, oh my god, right now. Oh. Ooh. Imperial Order feels like, man. Imperial Order feels like playing Pot of Greed inside of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. You need it. You need it. If your deck can support negating all spell cards for the entirety of the game, you should be playing it. This card not only stops all of the spell cards that I'm going to be putting out here, barring a Forbidden Droplet, which discards a trap card, which doesn't really happen. It also can end games, as a lot of those comeback cards are spell cards. Moving forward, Lightning Storm is a really good card. And what separates Lightning Storm from Harpy's Feather Duster is, this actually has that Raigeki effect. And speaking of such, I don't have Raigeki on here. Raigeki is actually sauce as well, just like Dark Hole, because monster reliance is more important than spell and trap reliance inside of this format, which is why Dark Hole and Raigeki would be in sauce, while Harpy's Feather Duster would be in situational. Still not a bad card though. Mind Control feels really good. I'm gonna put it in situational since there are a lot of generic links being played in this format. Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Unicorn, Access Code Talker are all very generic links, followed up by Boral Sword Dragon. All of those cards could take advantage of Mind Control, but the reason why I'm gonna put it in situational is that a lot of times when you're snatching your opponent's monster, you don't necessarily gain the same feeling as you would back in the day. Not saying that it's bad, it's just not always necessary. You still need to put forth your necessary effort to make the monster as well. Moving on, Mystic Mine is, I don't even want to put it in situational. And the reason why Mystic Mine isn't great right now, while Effect Monster Negation is so prevalent inside of this format, Backrow Disruption is as well. As long as it isn't Harpy's Feather Duster, you probably should be considering almost every form of Backrow Destruction. Hell, even Mystical Space Typhoon has its time to shine in particular decks like Sky Striker. Mystic Mine will definitely lose to those backrow heavy decks, but I guess you could find a way for it to shine if you see your meta not playing any backrow hate, then Mystic Mine away, I guess. But I think it'd probably be more regulated for the sideboard until then. Night Beam, I gotta put in the sauce. Boy, you don't know nothing about Night Beam. Night Beam can hit cards like Tri-Brigade Revolt or Dragon Maid Tiding before they can activate, and that's exactly what I'm banking on Night Beam to do. I'm still not even 100% sure if I want to put it in the sauce category. I want to put it in the oh no because I haven't done thorough testing with it, but for right now we're going to put it in the sauce just in case my theory is correct. Paleozoic Dynamiscus is, I feel it's situational because in this Yu-Gi-Oh card game, if you're giving up card economy, you need to be getting something great. And that's the reason why Book of Lunar Eclipse is situational as well. A banishment of a face-up card on the field is good, but is it really great? I mean, I guess you can get rid of cards like Tri-Brigade Charade and then prevent it from activating its effect, but against almost anything else I can think of off the top of my head, not too great right now. Don't get me wrong though, Paleozoic Dynamiscus is still an amazing card. Just when I thought I had Raigeki off of this list, I gotta put it in the list because you guys already see me talk about it. We got Raigeki. Hey, this is a saucy Yu-Gi-Oh card because wiping your opponent's entire board with one Yu-Gi-Oh card is pretty strong. I was fairly conflicted on Skill Drain if I wanted to even put it in this list because not only has it not been played, but it feels more like a side deck card at one, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the sauce category because we already know Effect Negation and a Monster Destruction is really big right now. Skill Drain actually provides blanket Effect Negation, which going against a lot of these decks, you start to expose them as just a whole bunch of puny monsters that your big monsters can attack over. And no, I'm not speaking from a purely insect stage when I played insects and beat that Lightsworn deck almost 10 years ago. But we're not talking about. We're gonna move on. Solemn Judgment actually feels like a really good card, but in actuality, it's a situational Yu-Gi-Oh card. There were a couple of locals videos that never got up where I actually had to build a budget deck, and Solemn Judgment was part of that budget, and it really disappointed. The reason why is because Solemn Judgment in the main board is fairly questionable. Yes, you can stop your opponent's cards, but a lot of times you're wishing that it was another card that didn't cost you half your life points, because stopping one particular point in Yu-Gi-Oh! Nowadays does not end your opponent's turn. Of course, you want to sideboard it from when your opponent Lightning Storms, or maybe Raigeki's you, possibly even Harpy's Feather Duster's use, but stopping regular interactions like an important Forbidden Chalice just feels really bad because your opponent can always follow up with more cards. Solemn Strike will probably always be in the goated of really good status. This has been the best trap card in Yu-Gi-Oh! For quite some time. I want to say about 2 years. So, I mean, I really don't expect much to change. And then, of course, Solemn Warning is an oh no, what are you doing, baby? Because almost any card in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game that Solemn Warning can stop, Solemn Strike can too. And for the people that say Solemn Warning can stop cards like Print Kid's Pandemonium, and it can also stop Shut Off Fusion, well, Solemn Strike can actually stop the monster that's going to use this effect. So where are we getting at? Super Polymerization feels, I want to put it in oh no, but I think Shut All Invoked can make some really good use of this card in the sideboard. The reason why this card isn't so great right now is because we're in a format where Earth and Wind cards are like being played like crazy. So this card really does struggle to shine at those points. But I think once we move towards Dark monsters getting more prevalence, Light monsters getting more prevalence, that is when this card becomes godly, especially for decks like Shut All Invoked. Torrential Tribute will probably always be a really good card. It's literally these two, except in the form of a trap card that you can trigger on your opponent's turn, and you can play around with to get some really saucy effects. Triple Tactics Talent is also a really good card. I feel even with hand traps, sometimes Triple Tactics Talent isn't as effective. It really depends on the type of deck that you play. You can't just play Triple Tactics Talent in anything, because if your opponent hand traps you a few times, it doesn't matter if you draw 2 cards or look at your opponent's hand to snatch a card out of their hand or take control of your monster. Your turn is over. So Triple Tactics Talent definitely does have its place, more so inside of combo decks or decks that just need that extra piece and play multiple pieces of it, but I don't think that Triple Tactics Talent is a mandatory card. And lastly, Twin Twisters goes in the really good category because, I mean, let's face it, it's Harpy's Feather Duster, except better. It does require you to discard a card, but I mean, when we were talking about discarding cards for high impact, pretty high impacts there.
Well, that is all that I have for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and check out these other awesome videos, as I'll catch you on the next one.